Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Today on the podcast, Catherine and I are going to talk about how to stop setting your marketing budget on fire. If you want to make sure you squeeze every penny of value out of your marketing budget, you need to start with a solid strategy. And there are 5 foundational blocks that a world-class marketing strategy is built on. We're going to describe those 5 blocks and explain how they all lock together to create the impact that most of your competition doesn't have. And if you don't have this foundation installed in your marketing, the consequences will cost you valuable money and time and who knows what else. So let's dive in and find out how to build a marketing strategy you feel confident in and doesn't waste your money. If somebody comes to you and asks the question, what is marketing? After all these years of us being a marketing firm, how do you answer the question?
Well, my favorite way to answer it is Peter Drucker's definition, right? Marketing is not just a function. It's actually the entire business seen from the customer's point of view. So it's the outside in. Everything about that is marketing.
And why is that so important? What do people get wrong? What do we see all the time that people get wrong?
Well, I think that they limit marketing to just the sales activities, how you create the look and feel of things. But it really is beyond that. It's how a customer encounters your organization. So from interacting with people, so the culture of your company matters, understanding the values of your company matters. There's this holistic look at your company, and all of that affects marketing, right? It's not just an activity. It's the entire business as somebody coming through the door or calling on the phone or entering your website would experience your business.
At any point in the customer journey, their interaction with the company and how they perceive the company is critical in this. It impacts every part of the company. It impacts our profitability. It impacts the idea that you're going to have returning customers. And so to talk about the foundation of what it is and the core foundation, it really boils down in many ways to just 5 pieces and parts that we're going to talk about. The first part is having a master plan. In a master plan, the pieces and parts that we talk about are critical because you've got to know kind of where are you going? Why are you doing it? What's the purpose of a company? When 90% of companies fail, one of the reasons they fail is because they don't have a clear picture of either where they're going, why they're doing it, and who they're serving. Yeah. So there's some pieces and parts. That aspect of master planning for a company, master strategic planning, is the first thing that has to happen. You have to know. And when we talk about that, we have another video on that subject. But high level, as a reminder, the best thing to do in the midst of it is to answer this question. Are you going to have enough energy to actually move forward and survive all the turbulent times of a business? Are you going to have enough energy for your team to move forward? And how do you create that energy? I think the number one thing that many of us weren't taught when we started our companies was to actually have a compelling reason why you're running the company. To actually have compelling things problems that you are there to serve and solve. We have talked about that over the years. What's the key things that stand out to you that are important about that?
When we talk about starting up a company, like an initial company, right? You have to present your business strategy, right? Whether
to who?
It could be to yourself. It could be to you and your pal. If you're looking for investment, you for sure have to put something together. If you're trying to get people to buy in to help you build it, if you're not just sort of starting and solo flying things, you have to put a business plan together, right? Yeah. And the business plan involves 2 pieces. It involves the financials and marketing. Those are kind of the 2 pieces that we say would make up a normal business plan. I think that what happens is that even if some of us have grown organically and never did that, if you've done it and you did it at the beginning, I think it's critical that you keep doing that. Because literally what you're doing is you're saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. Yeah. And this is why we think we can achieve that. So if you think about, 3-year planning, strategic planning, all of those things, it really is the revisit of what are we doing? Who are we doing it for? Does anyone care? Right? Which you better be asking at the beginning, which is something we'll talk about in a minute. But it's that revisit so that you're not forgetting those critical pieces of what makes up a really good strategic plan, of which marketing is well over half of it.
A marketing plan and a strategic plan are obviously separate things. And a strategic plan, if we're the way we talk about it, first involves the issues of why, what problems are we solving?
Mm-hmm.
The core purpose of our company, we've refined that to the place where we can put it in a sentence or two that allows everybody to stay focused. And then the objectives that we have to pay attention to accomplish that core purpose, to solve those problems. And then the rest of it is just, how do you plan out your quarterly goals, take inventory of all your resources? What have you done that's worked? What have you done that hasn't worked? What are the tools available to you? And then just planning it out from behind that, it becomes what the model we're using is like an arrow, where you just build a shaft that allows you to shoot straight.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have that, a master plan, if you will, then you have clarity on who you are, what you do, and what the problems you're solving, and then the objectives that you have to accomplish to get there. That's the first part, because a marketing plan will fall apart in the beginning if you don't start with, we know we're going to be doing this. Now we'll reference back to the master plan in a minute, but that's the first thing. You've got to have this master plan and think through it. The second thing is brand reputation. Is your brand crystal clear? And when we talk about it, we talk about brand being reputation. And recently we did a video on branding and what we mean by that, but re-emphasize what we talk about for branding.
Yeah. So we would say your brand is your reputation. And branding, when you're branding your company, what you're really looking to do is bond with your customer. So brand equals reputation, branding equals bonding.
What do you think the biggest challenges are to building a clear brand or reputation that businesses run into?
I think that most businesses don't keep a clear eye on consistency. So they do something and then they do something else and then they do something else. And when you look back over those, there's drift. So keeping things consistent from a look and feel standpoint, keeping things consistent from a messaging standpoint, like we are saying the same kinds of things over and over again. So we start to sound like this is our voice. They hire multiple different companies sometimes to do different elements. And that can be challenging because, again, there's no unified voice that says this is who we are and this is how we talk about ourselves. So I think there's just any number of things that we're just moving quickly. And so we get into the weeds and we don't pull back out and go, okay, how does this feel from the outside? Right? We enter into a lot of companies where they've built organically and they've done all kinds of things. And then when you step back to look from the outside, it's like, you guys don't make sense. You make sense inside your doors, but you don't make sense to the public because it's just kind of been add-ons as you go. And there's no one thinking cohesively about that big picture strategy that touches then every part of what you do.
Yeah. And I think the two parts that are important to strike here are, you've got to be really clear about what you want your reputation to be. Mm-hmm. What are your core values? How do you want to be seen as your behavior? How do you want people to talk about you? How do you want them not just to talk about your product, although that's part of it? Mm-hmm. How do you want them to talk about your company and your interactions and the way it is to work with you? And are you just a junk product or are you a premium product? And are you a flash in the pan or are you something that's going to last longer? You need to decide all those things, but it's critical to understand that a reputation isn't just decided that this is the way you want people to talk about you. It's earned. You have to decide, I want people to talk about us like this. Therefore, you have to earn it. And the reputation really isn't what you say about your company. It's reflected back of what your customers say about your company.
Right. And the more you can define and gain clarity on your brand and speak the same message and say the same things and sound the same, the more trust you will earn, and that will bond your customer to you. And that's a critical thing, both for returning customers and keeping that cycle going, people who are going to stick with you and recommend you, as well as the initial experience that somebody would have, and then the consistency of every interaction they have with you staying staying on par and on brand.
Yeah.
Right. So large organizations have, brand managers where they're like, that is not on brand. We're not going to do that. And they have specific reasons. The smaller we are, the harder it is sometimes to remember that it is just as important to have really clear brand guidelines, both visually and auditorily, and how you talk in your culture and your values and all those different things. So it's that brand consistency, that making sure that everything that you do is on brand for who you are as a company and the reputation you're trying to earn is just really vital to having a really good marketing strategy.
Yeah, that's good. The third thing is making sure you know the ideal client or customer. When we talk about having an ideal client or customer, we're talking about at some level these are the characteristics. This is what they do. This is what they say. This is the money they have. We're articulating who are these people that we really want to communicate with, and they have to be in the zone of specificity.
The zone of specificity,
which I will give credit to Ryan Levesque for.
It's a great phrase.
And when we're talking about that, what do we mean with the idea of an ideal client and making sure it's specific enough that they're in that zone of specificity?
Well, again, a lot of folks are not thinking, a lot of even business owners, like if you ask I'm awestruck by how many times you will ask a business owner, who's your target client?
Right.
And they will say, anyone, everyone, whoever will pay me money, right? Which I get. But if you're going to create a brand and create something that actually aligns with people, there really is an important principle that says, aim at a person, like a person who really, they capture. Like if you could have 100 of this guy or this gal or this family or whatever it is, 100 of these, we'd be happy companies. So understanding that the zone of specificity, the more that you can zero in on your ideal client, the better you're going to be at attracting the kinds of customers, A, that you can actually help, right? And then they're going to be happy. And B, that you enjoy serving.
Yeah.
So it is always, I think, a bit daunting and terrifying for companies to be like, but I don't want to leave anyone out. I don't want to narrow down too much. I don't want to leave anyone out. That narrowing is actually what will allow you to expand, because it is better that you have 100 ideal clients than 10,000 clients of whom 9,900 of them are not the best fit, and they're draining your resources and your energy and all those things.
I mean, if you think about it in the concept of a target, an archery target, you want to have something you're going to be shooting at. Usually, as a kid growing up at camp, the targets for archery were on a bale of hay. I always loved the cartoon version of Robin Hood, because in the competition, they had those cool old tripods with those cool giant round hay. I don't even know how they got them in a round function. And then they had a round target on top of it.
It was a cartoon. They could do anything.
Oh, it was a cartoon. Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
Real life not necessarily reflected here.
But that idea of we have this target and the entire target is not as valuable as the middle of the target, usually the red dot. We need to make sure that we're not just doing what a lot of people do. They just point in a general direction and they shoot. Have that hay bale or that larger target, aim at that. That's important. But having the target in the middle where you can, the more we can refine what we're looking at and what we're aiming at, the more often we will actually hit it. And it is amazing how you just focus on that and that kind of concept in archery or any kind of other function or shooting or whatever. It's like, pick a small area. Golf is the same thing. Don't just hit it in that direction. Actually see if you can aim for that one spot, moving your way down the field, and you will have more success.
Yeah.
Those customers needing for us to be able to go, I know who they are. And so what we're talking about knowing your customer, but making sure they've been researched. Yeah. We use a lot of research. We use survey questions to continue to refine over time. We have avatars that we design that, we talk about who they are, How old are they? Do they have a family? Where do they look for their information? How do I know how I can have a relevant conversation with them? Because having a conversation with a customer, if you're a salesperson, you can ask questions.
Yep.
When you're doing your a traditional one-way advertising, whether it's radio, TV, newsprint, or you're doing digital advertising, writing content or whatever, you're speaking out, and any kind of conversation you're going to get back is delayed in comments or it's super delayed. So you have to be crystal clear on who you're speaking to, and then you know that it's resonating.
Yeah. And the magic in it, if you will, is the more that you can identify who a single person and really begin to articulate, like in 3D, what that person's life is like.
Yeah.
And what is happening in their lives on a regular basis, and how your product, service, solution, whatever, meets a pain point that would actually make a difference. The more that you can articulate that really, really clearly, the sharper your copy will be. The more that person who reads or hears or sees will go, oh my gosh, they're talking right to me.
Yeah.
And we make the mistake of thinking that if we focus too tightly, we're narrowing our market too much. And actually the opposite is true. You're narrowing to those people that you can truly serve and serve well. And that will ultimately grow you better and faster than doing sort of the broad sweep where you're not saying much of anything to anyone in particular.
The reason this is part of the foundational part of marketing is because so many people, we know for a fact that it's important, because when people miss this, their marketing dollars are completely diffused. Mm-hmm. They're watered down. They're literally wasted.
Yeah.
And, some of it finds its way, but it's like shooting all over the place with a machine gun, knowing that the target is the size of something like a coffee cup.
Yeah.
It doesn't do any good to spray all over the place. It's this critical part of it. It really is part of the foundation. Now, the fourth part is right product, right price. This is a tricky one for a lot of people because they're like, I don't have time. I've got to get going. I'm already burning money. Mm-hmm. We'll figure it out as we go along. But if you only have so much money to fuel your company, you can't just keep testing. So the goal is to get to the place as fast as possible of knowing what is the right product that's going to be your main product. Mm-hmm. That is a product that solves people's problems that they want to solve. Now, that's an important distinction, and some people might not have caught that. Solving a problem that people are aware of and they want to solve. We as human beings have plenty of problems, and it's amazing how many other people can identify the problems we have. But if we don't see it as a problem, you've got to convince us it's a problem.
Right.
That takes a lot of time and money.
Yeah.
Even if I see it as a problem, but I don't think it's a problem I need to solve, again, you've got to convince me. So the ideal is, if you have done that research about that person and you know who they are, matching a product to that person is critical. One of the mistakes that I've realized over the last few years that's starting to become more and more clear to me is that people have a misunderstanding about marketing, that really good marketing and really good advertising is meant to convince people that the product that you like, the product that you've decided is something you want to invest your time and money and energy in, that you think is amazing, is actually convince them that they want it.
Yeah.
And marketing works if it waves a magic wand and allows you to move something that you wanted to sell. Versus actually really great marketing and really great companies have identified a problem that somebody has, and then they've communicated to people how their product or service fits that, and actually design the products or services to meet it, to solve a problem.
Yeah.
People who are genius can, and almost prophetic, if you will, can look ahead of the curve of where we are in time and anticipate in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, our society is going to have these needs. When the car was being developed and everybody was saying, I don't need a car, I just need a better horse. The people that understood at some point, this is going to be something that is actually going to meet people's needs that they want, And then Ford was one of those people who understood how do I make a system that's going to produce that even more effectively for them.
Right.
So what they want is they want to go somewhere faster. They want this cool new thing, and they want it at a decent price. And they want to be able to get it easily and quickly.
Yeah.
Those are amazing things, but that's a customer-centric product development. What is your rocket product? What is your main product? What is that core product that really is going to take off? And once the research and the testing, and you've kind of gone through some iterations, you have that next piece of the foundation of marketing of, okay, don't scale your marketing until you know this. Do a little bit of marketing, test your stuff, make sure you've got it, but don't just dump all your money into something that you think, I think it's a great idea. I don't know if they're going to like it or not. Let's make sure somebody likes it and is good at it.
Well, and we could do, and probably should do, a whole video on how you put a good survey together. But the other thing is, when you're trying to discover product market fit, it's really important that you don't ask people what they would do, but that you ask them what they have done.
Super important.
Yeah, and we've learned the hard way when we were young, and we were just trying to. We did a documentary in our ute.
Yes,
when we were
did.
in our ute early in the company, and we used to have people like, "Would you buy this if this was done?" Oh, absolutely. And so we ended up ordering 5,000 of them, and I think several years later we threw away about 3,000 of those because, as it turned out,
we did.
People didn't do what they said they would do.
One of the things we did there is, and it's important to note, that we created the documentary, we sold it, and we were profitable, which is 95% of films are never profitable. But we didn't lose money on the project, but we threw away valuable money because there wasn't a big enough market for it. We didn't understand that.
Yeah. So those are just learning curves, right? But we have this tendency to, we did a focus group and we said if we invented this, that people would, it's a whole nother video. But just realize that people are really bad at predicting what they would do.
Yeah. So the final part of this whole foundation of a marketing plan that's important is, after we figure out what the right price fit is, that we have a core product and an introductory product. Mm-hmm. The core product in itself is that product that we're going to spend our time making money with. It's going to be the main thing that brings in revenue. After we've decided that it's the right fit and we have the right price, now we've got this idea that, okay, that's what we're going to leverage, but how do we introduce it to people? Because a lot of times the core product isn't the thing that people are going to buy right off the bat. If the core product is very inexpensive, if you're Mars and one of your core products, the Mars candy, and one of your core products,
I was like, the planet?
It's not the planet.
You're Mars?
If you're Mars candy, one of your main flagship products would be M&Ms.
Snickers.
Would be M&Ms.
Snickers.
And with the M&Ms, you know why it's an M&M and not a Snicker?
Because that's actually a Mars product and Snickers isn't?
I have no idea if that's the truth, but I know that the commercials don't have little Snickers people wandering around. They have little M&M people wandering around.
They have definitely invested in those little M&M characters. You win.
That's the signal. It's just it's a slight signal, but it's a signal. Now that we've totally discussed the M&M issue, that's a cheap product, right? If you've never had M&Ms before, entering into trying them now, they're so ubiquitous in society, Western society, that they're recognized, and odds are you've tried, somebody or most people have tried an M&M, and they have an opinion on whether they like peanut or non-peanut.
Yes, and then very strong opinions about why would they do things like peanut butter M&Ms. We already had peanut M&Ms. Why even go that direction? I don't even know. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Not enough research, in my opinion. So we have this. That's an unusual thing where one of the flagship products is an introductory product. You could do samples or something like that of that. They have the Halloween sample that are like 5 or 6 M&Ms that you can pass out, and those are a great way to do it. But most products aren't like M&Ms. Most products, that is a more significant purchase. It's a more significant risk for most customers. How do you introduce them into that? What do you do? And it's either a product you're selling or it's something that they can be introduced to, that they can invest time in. They can look at that. Cars, you can go on a test drive. You can be in other people's cars, but you can go to the lot. You can go to a test drive. If I can get you to come to the lot and I can get you to take a test drive in the car, the chances that if you're willing to do that, that you're actually really interested in investing in the car, go up significantly.
Sure. So you're really looking at creating some sort of a product that requires a small commitment of time or money, depending on if you're a service or product-based business.
Absolutely.
So demo, free phone call, there's a bazillion ways to do it. But what is it that you can do that's a smaller step that engages somebody and allows you the opportunity to excite them and build trust that it is worth stepping into and investing in the larger product that really is your flagship, your bread and butter?
Yeah. And when we have both a core product and we have this introductory product set up, then all of a sudden we move that fifth element into place of a foundation where we're ready to start. So we walk through having a master plan that's clear in our company, understanding and having complete clarity on our brand and our reputation, making sure it's crystal clear. Ideal clients and customers that are researched and understand, we know who they are, we know what they're doing. And I would add just a throw in here, knowing what their core values are. And that comes from us knowing what our brand is and knowing that there's an alignment between our core values and the customer's core values is probably one of the most powerful marketing tools that has come out of the last 10 years of research, and understanding that that is more powerful than demographics or psychographics. When we have that kind of clarity, we move on to the right product with the right price and matching that, and then making sure that we have a core product and some kind of an introductory product, kind of well, somebody called it a missionary product. And that idea that it goes out and it does the work for you and promotes you and everything else. It's those 5 things that are critical to the foundation of the marketing product or marketing campaign before you ever go forward. I can guarantee anybody that is listening to us, right? We can usually guarantee if you don't have a solid version of any of those 5 or of all of those 5, you will respectively have a weaker campaign. It will be less successful, and you will spend more money to acquire customers than you needed to, and ultimately leave money on the table and waste money in the marketing process.
Right. And I would add, if you're established, but you're looking to innovate and you want to innovate, which is, let's see, it was attributed to Peter Drucker. I don't think he said it, but business has only 2 functions, marketing and innovation, right?
Yeah.
Milan Kundera is the person who apparently said that, though most people quote Peter Drucker. So
and
Peter must have quoted.
Peter was really smart quoting her, and then he became famous quoting that.
You know what? He had a bigger platform. But thank you, Milan. So the reality is, if you're going to innovate a new product, you go through this cycle again, right? You're constantly doing this test and what's the product market fit, and how do I present this product, and how do I make sure I understand the pain I'm solving for this particular person. So this is a cyclical, always kind of thing that has to be there for you to do good marketing on any product or service that you're building as your company grows.
Once those 5 pieces are developed and they're all strong and built out, then we're ready to go to the next place. And that next place is
actually telling people, marketing, advertising, the fun stuff.